Shall we start? Okay, perhaps I start the MJH today by giving a very short introduction. So I think I would like to welcome everyone to this MJH 16. Today's paper that we're going to appraise is something that is very, very interesting as well as very, very important. So I perceive today's MJH is very special, and because of the topic, as well as because increasingly most of us are doing online survey, right? Virtual survey, and also uh, broader and broader. Yeah. So this paper actually shows us how we can do that different in a different manners, and also we can see how they overcome the challenge of low response rate, and how would you go about uh, analyzing your variables. You try to look out for how they actually combine certain variables so that the sample size is sufficient for the analytical strategy. Yeah. So there's some other strategy that the research team use because of the sensitivity of the research topics. So uh, I think it's something that is of very, very good lessons that we want to learn. Uh, you can see how they even applied that kind of in the questionnaire, how they applied certain strategy just to convince the respondent that the anonymization is very serious about that, and they wanted respondents to feel like it is safe, to respond. Yeah, because of the topics itself lah. Yeah. So, however, the respondent is still very far from desirable, and the whole process we can see how they discuss it, and that actually apply to many of us when you do online survey. So see whether we can apply the same to our own research nationwide survey. Okay, right. So feel free to drop your comments, or feel free to raise your hands and discuss about how they do it and how we can apply it. Okay, back to you, Iman. Can't hear you. Is your mic on?
Oh, sorry, I am muted.
Yeah.
Okay, so good morning and Assalamualaikum everyone. So we are back again at our Meta Journal Hour. So we are on series 16 now. Thank you, Prof. Chu, for the introduction. So as of today, we were going to appraise this paper in which that the full title is The Prevalence of Questionable Research Practices, Research Misconduct and Their Potential Explanatory Factors, which is this is a survey among academic researchers in the Netherlands. So this is the full paper of today's MJH that we are going to appraise. So feel free to actually scan the QR code if you haven't download or you haven't read the full version of the paper. Okay, so this paper was published in the PLOS One journal. So before we start, so just want to introduce you that this paper is based on the National Survey on Research Integrity, in which that this was the largest study ever on research integrity have been conducted in the Netherlands, in which that initially they distribute this questionnaire to 40,000 researchers in the Netherlands, and they also conduct this study in terms of to capture the data on research fabrication and also research falsification as well. Okay, so as for the introduction, so trust in research is usually earned by conducting a transparent and also a research that is replicable, using ethically sound and rigorous methodological quality, but this often compromised by research misconduct by the researchers. So in which that there are many responsible research practices that have to be promoted, which is such as open science practice, such as open data sharing, pre-registration of study protocols, and also open access publications. However, before we can actually promote these responsible research practices, studies on the prevalence of research misconduct should be conducted first, because we need the solid evidence on what are the questionable research practices that have been done by the researchers to fully or comprehensively understand the occurrence of this QRP, which is the questionable research practices misconduct. So what are the research gap that the study is trying to address is actually previously the studies that have addressed the questionable research practices are discipline specific, in which that they go into specific discipline and only focus on a few factors, which is they are not comprehensively addressed. So in this study, they are actually trying to address many components of the QRPs, as well as across many disciplines. So what are the examples of the questionable research practices? So the examples are not submitting valid negative results for publication, in which that when the researchers found out that their research does not yield desirable results, so they only publish uh, results that is only that they appear good to them, and also they are not reporting flaws in their study design or execution, and also selective citation to enhance their own findings, in which that they don't really report or they don't really support their findings with other studies that is contradicting with their findings. Okay, so what are the study or the survey, which is the National Survey Research Integrity is trying to achieve, is actually first to estimate the disciplinary field specific prevalence of the QRP, which is the questionable research practices, false and fabrication, FF, and also the responsible research practices. So in this survey, they are trying to address these three QRPs, FF, and also RRP. So this abbreviation is going to be used throughout this presentation. So just get yourself familiar with the abbreviation, and also to estimate the association between the explanatory factors of the QRPs, FF, and also the RRPs. But in this paper that we are going to appraise today, they only cover the QRPs and also FF, in which that the RRPs is covered in another paper that is not within the scope of this paper. Okay, so we will go in terms of for the materials and methods of the paper. First, this study was approved by the Ethics Review Board of the School of Social and Behavioral Sciences of the Tilburg University, in which that, in addition, they made their data available in the open science framework. So you can actually scan the QR code on the screen to actually access their full questionnaire, even their raw anonymized data set, and also their complete data analysis plan, also as well as their source code and also version control, in which that you can find open science framework. Okay. So in terms of the study design of this study, so this was a cross-sectional study using the web-based anonymous questionnaire. So who was involved in this study? So in this study, academic researchers working at or affiliated to at least one of 15 universities or 7 medical centers in the Netherlands were invited to participate via email. So the inclusion criteria for this study is, first, the researchers must have an average of at least 8 hours of research-related activity weekly, and they must come from the life and medical sciences, or social and behavioral sciences, or natural and engineering sciences, or the arts and humanities. So you can see that they actually covered a lot of across disciplines in this study, and the subjects or the participant must be a PhD candidate or junior researcher, or postdoctoral researcher, or assistant professor, or associate or full professor. So in this study, they actually define junior researcher as individual with a master or PhD degree doing a minimum of 8 hours per week of research-related tasks under close supervision. So that's how they actually define the junior researcher in this study. So what are the study activities conducted? So in this study, they actually hired a third party, which is a trusted market research company, which is known as the Kantar Public. So this company actually will send out the survey invitations and will send email reminders to the target group or to the target population, and they also will send the anonymous data set to research team at the end of data collection to be analyzed. So we will look the study activity into details. So at first, the university and the university medical centers that actually supported the survey will supply the third-party company with the email address of their eligible researchers based on the inclusion criteria. Or for those institutions that is not within the supporting institution, or for example, like they are from the private institution, so the Kantar public will actually get the researchers email through the publicly available resources such as from websites. And then the company will first send the first email invitation. So in the first email invitation, the potential respondent will get informed consent, and then they will also get an explanation of the survey's purpose and also how their identity will be protected throughout the survey. And for those participants who actually consented to participate in the study, they will be sent a survey link for them to actually complete the survey. And then the survey was actually open for 7 weeks, in which that within that 7 weeks, 3 reminder emails will be sent by the Kantar public for the non-respondents, in which that for the non-respondents, they will get 3 reminders within 1 to 2 weeks of interval. And after data analysis plan had been finalized and pre-registered on the Open Science Framework, the Kantar public will send an anonymized dataset containing individual responses to the researcher. So in terms of the survey instrument of the study, so this questionnaire, in which that the NSRI questionnaire composed of 4 components, which is the 11 questionable research practices, QRP, 11 responsible research practices, RRP, and 2 fabrication and falsification, FF, and 12 explanatory variables, in which that the 12 explanatory factors contains 75 questions, in which that you can actually see each of the following 75 questions on the S6 table of the supplementary papers that included in the website. And then in terms of the questionnaire, the 3-year time frame was chosen to limit the recall bias, and all respondents obtained the same set of questions on QRP, RRP, and FF. So in terms of the RRP here, it is reported elsewhere, in which they published another paper on it. And on top of the 4 components of the survey instrument, there were also background questions for the respondents, in which that include weekly average duration of research-related work and their dominant field of research, their academic rank, gender, and also whether they are doing empirical research or not. So first, we will look at the component of 11 QRP. So from the 11 QRP, it was adapted from a previous recent study that included a majority of a biomedical disciplinary field. However, because in this study, this questionnaire is going to be used across many different fields, so the researcher actually conducted a series of disciplinary field-specific focus group to ensure that these 11 QRPs were applicable to the multidisciplinary target group in this study. So the 11 QRPs actually had 7-point Likert scales ranging from 1 to 7, in which that 1 is never and 7 is always. And they also have the option of not applicable here. So this is how they are going to rate their answer. And second, we have the fabrication and falsification, which is the FF. So in this questionnaire, they're actually using the randomized response technique, RR technique, with only a yes or no option. So in this randomized response technique, it actually will elicit more honest answer because the question could be sensitive. So you can see that on the screen is actually the example of the FF questionnaire, that it is actually a quite sensitive questions for the researcher to answer. Okay, so in which that they can actually indicate their question based on the randomized response. So I actually have a video on how the randomized response technique is conducted. So hopefully you can spend like only like 1 or 2 minutes to watch the video.
So it's originally no sound, right?
Oh, so there is no sound, Prof?
Yeah, okay. Just want to let them know.
Okay. Uh, Wait, let me look at the setting first.
Iman, we don't see the video already. We just see your slide. Iman.
Okay, Prof. Wait, I'm trying to open the video with the sound because I think with the sound we can understand the RR technique better.
Oh, there's a
Wait,
sound, huh?
yeah.
Okay.
Let me try first.
While we are waiting, I personally I
Hmm.
found this kind of a questionnaire setting is very, very interesting. Yeah.
Let's see.
So we are looking for how to get this so-called technique in. We have found that, then we'll share with you all. Main photo staff in HSAAS. Yeah. And for others, you can also check with us. Or we would actually, if we find it to be free, I think we are likely to post it on our website also lah. I think this is something that's very useful for sensitive questionnaire. Okay, so Ima is ready.
Is the sound there? Is the sound there, Prof?
I don't hear
Still
anything.
can't see anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I thought on the original video that I found, and there's no sound.
It has sound.
Yes,
With
sound.
the
Okay.
yes, it has sound. Just give me a few seconds to start. Mm-mm. This is how it works. We ask you,
Yeah, yes, got sound already.
did you ever steal? With a randomized response, a method that's been around since the 1950s. This is how it works. We ask you a yes or no question. For example, did you ever steal? You have two choices as an answer, yes or no. These answers are represented by symbols, say a yes for a triangle and no for a circle. When the question is presented to you online, you press a start button. The symbols on the screen now begin to alternate between a triangle and a circle. When ready to answer, you hit stop. The symbols freeze. Yes may be represented by a triangle and no by a circle. In a separate box, you choose the symbol that represents your answer. Because you alone control when the symbols stop alternating, no one knows which symbols represent yes and no at the time you hit stop, except yourself. These answers get thrown into a big box of data, and we end up with a ton of circles and triangles for every question, not knowing who picked what and if they meant yes or no at the time they answered. So what use is this information if you can't tell what someone's answer means? How will we ever know if scientists did steal? On an individual level, it's useless, and that's the point. The purpose is not to know individual answers, but the group's answers as a whole, or what we call the prevalence of the behavior. How do we figure this out from this big box of symbols? Well, before the study, the probabilities behind how often a circle or triangle alternates between yes or no are fixed. For example, every 5 out of 6 triangles mean yes, and every 5 out of 6 circles mean no. This is the key to finding out what the answers mean. Because the probabilities are fixed, we can now estimate how many times a triangle meant yes and a circle no. We end up knowing how many scientists are thieves, but we will never exactly know who they are. We will never be able to trace the answers back to an individual. Your privacy is protected.
Using this method in our survey, we hope to get an honest report on the state of research integrity of scientists as a whole. The data we collect will help us to understand the extent to which misbehaviors happen in science while protecting an individual's identity. And from there, we can
So that's how they actually done their randomized response technique, in which that the data will not be collected individually. So it can actually encourage people to answer the questions more honestly. Okay. Okay, so now we will look at on the explanatory factor scales that were collected in this study. So these scales were based on a psychometrically tested scales most used in research integrity survey or literature and focus on the actionability. So we can see that there are 12 scales included in this study. Okay, so you can look at the first scale, in which that the scientific norm. So the scope here is based on what I summarized from the questionnaire itself, because it will be used throughout the discussions later on. So the scientific norms here means the scientific ideals behavior of researchers that may adhere or subscribe to. And the peer norms here means the perception of researchers' peers' actual behavior toward research. And perceived work pressure here could mean the burden on the current task or job demand of the researchers. Publication pressure is related to the pressure to publish articles. Pressure due to dependence on funding is related to securing grants, whether they can continue their research having grants or not, and whether their job security is dependent on whether they are able to secure or having grants or not. And then six skills is the survival mentoring and also responsible mentoring. So survival mentoring, in which that defined as the mentoring to survive in the field, which could be related with networking and how the researchers present themselves in the field. And then in terms of the responsible mentoring is a mentoring to ensure work are of higher quality, transparent and ethical. So this mentoring is more on like how to do research, how to ensure that the researcher can conduct a high quality research. And then next is competitiveness of the research field, in which that how the researcher perceive that they have their own rival in their own research field. And in terms of the distributional organizational justice, in which that how the resources is being allocated, the allocation of tasks within the department, the decision on promotion within the managerial decisions, and also the assessment of the KPIs by the management. They are also being asked on the procedural organizational justice, in which that this is related to the process, such as the process of allocating tasks, the process of resource allocation, the process of promotion, and also the process of assessing the academic performance. And for the scale number 7 and number 11 and number 12 is related to the likelihood of QRP detection by collaborators and reviewers. So in this study, the collaborators is defined as students, colleagues or other academics or whom the researcher works together on one or more research projects. By mean the reviewers is defined as academic peers who in the context of publishing the work independently to assess its quality. So as you can see that on beside the scale here, there are one asterisk and two asterisk. So one asterisk here means that the scale were piloted, but then for those with two asterisk here, it means that this questionnaire or these scales were not piloted, but then they did it with the psychometric properties with the Cronbach alpha of more than 0.76. So that is why they actually justify why they did not pilot this scale. So for the full list of the explanatory factor scales and their corresponding items, because each of the following scale have different questions, which is they have 75 questions overall. So you can actually download the S5 table in the supplementary materials to actually look at the question survey for these scales. Okay, so on top of that, because they have 75 questions in the explanatory factor scales, so they actually plan the study to have the missingness by design. So the missingness by design is actually to minimize the survey completion time. So instead of receiving the full set of 75 explanatory factor question items, the participant actually receive one of the three random subset in which that they have three random subsets of five explanatory factors. So each of the participant only get 50 question items instead of the full set of 75. So this is what it called by missingness by design. And then in terms of the survey completion, respondent had to either complete the survey or withdraw. So they cannot actually choose which of the questions that they don't want to answer. So they actually have to answer all, or they are considered as the missing data, or the survey is not completed. In terms of the pre-testing of the questionnaire, before they conducted the survey, the researcher actually conduct cognitive interviewing with 8 academics from different ranks and disciplines represented in the study. So in this cognitive interviewing, they actually evaluate the survey questions by provide a detailed depictions of meanings and process used by the respondents to answer questions. So these are some of the comments from the cognitive interviewing. For example, one respond that they should remove the instruction video on the RR technique that we watched earlier on. So the researcher actually included the video on the questionnaire, but one of the panel in the pre-testing team suggest that they should remove because it could be redundant on the instruction. And then some of the comments includes to improve the clarity of the instruction and also to use different fonts to emphasize certain words, which is includes the technicality of the questions. So you can actually access the full report of the cognitive interview, which is on the Open Science Network, the same GitHub platform. You actually access the cognitive interview report. Yes, Prof.
Iman,
Yes, Prof.
may I ask you, did you do any further study or no? Try to find out what is this missingness by design? I just really couldn't actually, no, understand uh, how it actually make the survey better.
I read it only thoroughly, but what I understand is actually instead of they have the 75 full set of questionnaire, but then they intentionally do that the question only have 50 items in which that the set of 50 items they have three subsets of that 50 items.
Okay,
So
so
the missing data is not like intention like sengaja. So it's like by the study design itself.
yeah, yeah, I
Mm.
understand that, but
Mm.
why? How does that make any missing data
Or
irrelevant?
maybe they just want to increase the compliance to answer the
Yeah,
question instead of just 70, only 50.
I was about to
I,
answer the same.
I can understand that, but when you have three different subsets, now every 50 there will be 25 missing from there, another 50, 25 not overlapping, another subset, so there are three, so all the three subsets of 50 questions in the questionnaire, they do not have similarity in the 25 items
You mean the response, right, Prof?
because there are
Ah,
75 that they pick randomly
mm,
and only send out 50.
mm.
So there are 25 potentially not overlapping in these three subset
Oh, okay,
up to
understand.
25.
Understand.
So when you got the three groups, when they receive different subsets of the questionnaire, so they may not get 25 up to 25 variables in these three subset. I have no idea how does that uh, improve their analysis. They may
I
not be having, you can imagine the three groups, then they are not having the same variables, up to 25 variables in all these three subgroups of respondents. And in the analysis, they will not be able to pull these three groups when they are analyzing the variables that are not being captured throughout the three subsets. I do not know why is that a better design. If they think 75 is too many, then just 50 for all lah. The same 50 item for all lah. But they still want 75.
Mm.
And they are afraid it's too long.
Mm.
But then you do not have up to 25 variables in this subsets of three groups, then how are they going to have a good, I mean, if you get like 1,000 respondent, then up to 333 do not actually have similar variables, up to 25 variables, then you can't analyze that variables in 1,000. Then you just have like perhaps up to 667, So it actually has reduced the numbers of respondents for those variables that are not collected. Uh, so I still don't know why they design. It's actually purposely designed the missingness.
Yeah.
I think I believe there's a reason, but I haven't actually got to that. It does not make sense to me yet.
Because I think in the open science platform there is a document on how they actually impute their missing data, but in terms of why they did their analysis this way, they didn't really justify in the paper. Instead of like collecting the questions, like smaller number of questions items so that everyone could answer the same questions instead of doing imputations.
Mm,
Mm.
okay, perhaps they need to read
Mm.
further. Thank you.
Okay. So we move on to the statistical analysis of the study. So in this study, in the second objective, if you can still recall, they are going to assess the association between the independent variables and also the outcome. So the two independent variables, first is on the background characteristic, and the second one is the explanatory factor scales. So the first outcome is the overall mean, the questionable research practices in which that assess using the multiple linear regression. Then the second outcomes is the prevalence of any frequent QRP, in which that we are going to see on how they tabulate the data later on, in which they are using the binary logistic regression. And the third one is the ordinal logistic regression, is to assess the association between the independent variables with the FF, which is the falsification and fabrication of the data. So in terms of the analysis strategy of the outcomes, the overall mean QRP was computed as the average score on the 11 QRP after recording the not applicable scores to 1. So if you can still recall that the Likert scale is 1 to 7, and they also have the option of not applicable. So for those respondents who answered the question as NA, so that question would be recorded to 1, to the score 1, and then they would calculate the overall mean QRP. And then on the other hand, the prevalence of the QRP was operationalized as the percentage of respondents who scored at least one QRP as 5, 6, or 7, in which that let's say that for the question QRP number 1, um, which of the answer at least 5, they would consider that the question as the respondent have done the QRP. And then in terms of the FF, the level of FF was assigned if a respondent had admitted to at least one instance of falsification or fabrication. Because in FF, they have two questions, right? So if they answer either one, so they actually have conducted the FF for this question item. So for the analysis strategy for the multivariable analysis of the explanatory factor scales, the researcher used the z-scores computed as the first principal component of the corresponding items. So the missing explanatory factor items due to not applicable answer were replaced by the mean z-score of the items of the same scale. And this one is on the missingness by design, in which that the researcher used the multiple imputation, and then from that imputation, the 50 complete data sets were generated by imputing the missing values using the predictive mean matching. So this is how they actually match the missing values using the imputation. And then the regression models were fit to each of the 50 data sets, and the results combined into a single inference. So all multivariables model contain the five background variables and also the explanatory factor scale.
Okay, Iman, just hold on. Azifa, would you like to supplement to this slide?
I think not yet, Prof. Later, Prof.
Right,
Yeah. I think during the when when there's a table, I think it's much easier to understand.
Okay, so here it seems like they purposely
Hmm.
reduce 75 from 75 to 50.
50.
So 75 out of 50, 25 out of 75 is actually one third, isn't it?
Hmm.
So up to one third.
Up to output.
So they take
Yes.
as okay to run the multiple imputation to replace the missing data. So all of them actually at the end got 75 items filled.
I think it's 50, Prof. They say analyze the 50, not 75.
Still just 50.
Because if you look at this point, the 50 complete data sets were generated, which means that um, hmm,
Okay.
like my data set, my 50 data set would not be the same with the
Mm.
other researcher who received the other random subsets.
Yeah.
So that's how they,
Apa ni, Iman, I think the
yeah,
missing explanatory factor tu is only for not for the 20 answer that they are not answer, but for not applicable
for the,
answer, right?
this one is
Um,
replaced by the mean z-score yang untuk NA tu.
Yalah, bukan yang 20
Right?
yang missing by design
No,
tu kan?
no, no,
So
no.
yang ini yang others answer
Hmm.
tu, Prof. It's not yang 20 missing by design.
But then, not very
That's why
sure.
total up is 50.
But if you say that, I'm not really sure
The
how
main
they actually
explanatory
impute.
factors are those socio-demography, academic rank, all that. The usually we can't multiple imputation with the explanatory factor. Like I'm man. You cannot run multiple engineering to replace me. Otherwise I will be getting a female gender. So people do multiple imputation to replace explanatory factor.
Prof,
Multiple
for gender, there is three answer, right, Iman? I think male, female, and there is another answer for that.
Like not saying like not they're not declaring their gender.
My
Hmm.
point is, we don't run multiple imputations to
Oh.
replace missing data from the social demography or characteristic. We use multiple imputation to replace other outcome measures
Hmm.
and using the
Right.
social demography characteristic as the predictors to replace the missing value in the outcome measures. So here the study mentioned multiple imputations was employed to deal with the missingness by design. So, uh, so it's not clear in the paper, isn't it? Whether
Hmm.
they use a
Whether they
50, they
or
use a
75.
50 or 75.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Yeah.
Okay. So these are some of the points on how they actually ensure the identity protection for their participants before we move on to the results of the study. So the identity protection was done ensured in accordance to the European General Data Protection Regulation and corresponding to the legislation in the Netherlands. So first, we have seen at the beginning of this presentation, in which that they are using the third party company to conduct the survey to ensure that to ensure or to collect all the email addresses of respondents. And this company also did not store any respondents URLs or IP addresses. And as you have seen on the video, they are using the RR randomized response method for the two most sensitive questions for FF. And they also analyze the data at aggregate levels only, not at individual level. And they also send anonymized data set to the research team upon closure of data collection and also the pre-registration of the statistical analysis plan, in which that the researchers will not know who actually participate in their study.
Iman, do you have any idea that we have a similar so-called company or not, like Kanta Public in Malaysia, that who actually know
Hmm.
how to conduct scientific survey
Yeah.
as a third party? I
Not
think
sure if CRO can do this. Not very sure.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
you can check with them,
Mm.
to be hired to do.
Probably they we have the third party company, but not sure whether they can they have all the service lah.
Yeah, yeah, isn't it?
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so we move on to the results of the study. So of the 22 universities and also the university medical centers in the Netherlands, 8 actually supported the survey. So you can see that in the flowchart here that first they total invited around almost 64,000 of respondents, but then you can see that some of the emails will bounce back, or whether there would be no response, or whether the participant actually opted out from the study. And then 10,000 from the 63,000 actually opened the survey link, but then only 78 did not consent, and there were additional of around 1,200 which ineligible to join the study. And then the eligible respondent who actually started the survey was around 9,000, but then because of they did not complete the survey, so they would be considered as drop out from the study, which is around 2,700. So the final number is around 6,813. But then you can see that this is the total invited participant, in which that comprised of both from those institutions that were being invited and as well as those private institutions. So the percentage response could only be reliably calculated from the supporting institution, which is from the 8 supporting institutions. So the overall response rate from the supporting institutions is only around 21.2%. So if you want to see that the whole institution figures, you can actually look at the S1 figure. Do you want to look at this, go through to this figure, Prof? I can actually open it here.
Never mind, hold on first. I think
Okay.
here Sam got anything to say.
Yes, sorry for my ignorance. How do we get the 21.2%? Because I tried to calculate from the flow chart.
Yeah,
but I
it's not
couldn't
from
get it.
this. It's actually not from this flowchart, but from the supporting institution, because this flowchart only shows the total invitations, which is from this both supporting institution as well as the private institution that is not being officially invited in the study. Let me open the S1 figure first.
And while you do that, is there any reason provided by the authors why the rest of the 14 institutions they declined to participation?
It is not stated in the paper. Mm.
Thank you.
So while Iman is trying to open up another file, have anyone got any questions about sampling process or sample size estimation for this study? If you were to be the researcher, would you want to have any type of sampling at all? But it seems like they are doing a universal sampling, isn't it? And it also seems
Yes.
like they don't care whether they over recruit or of any sample size, minimal sample size required. Do you all read that in the paper that they are concerned about sample size or they're concerned about sampling process?
So going back to Dr. Sam's question, they actually calculated the 21.1% only from the supporting institutions. So this is found in the supplementary figure of the paper. So you can see that there were 8 supporting institutions, and from that 8 supporting institutions, they actually sent around 23,000 of invites. But then the final number is around 20,000 of 20,000, around 20,000, 21,000 number of invites, in which that after they consider those emails that were bounced back and then no response, and so those subjects were opted out from the survey. And then from this number, only around 4,000 actually opened the survey link, and from this number, only 4,000 actually started and completed started the survey, but then only 3,000 actually completed the survey. So that's how they get the 21.1% of response rate. But for the non-supporting institutions, they don't really actually have the total number, so that's why I think they cannot calculate the whole response rate because they don't have the initial number for that non-supporting institutions. So that's how they actually calculate. They only got it from the supporting institutions.
Iman, what does it mean with supporting institution?
Um, they actually send invites to 22 institutions kan. Ada 15 dengan 7 kan. 15 dengan 7, 15 is university and 7 is medical centers. But then I think only 8 actually responds to the Kantar public that saying that they would actually provide their data. I mean like the emails of their researchers. Probably the other institutions that were invited will not actually respond back to the Kantar public. That's how I understand it lah.
Yeah, that's right. So would you say this is a nationwide Netherlands nationwide survey?
If we look at the discussion later on that although that the number is quite small, but the researcher actually claimed that there are no other study that have been done larger than them.
Yeah, there'll be.
So yeah. Okay. Okay, so we will move on to the descriptive analysis of the study. So you can look that first we want to compare between male and female of in the total sample. So you can see that majority or more than half of the respondents were male, around 55%. And then in terms of the disciplinary field, that we can see that there are actually equally distributed between male and female, except for these natural and engineering sciences, in which that a majority, I think more than 70% were from male. And then in terms of the academic rank, for the associate and full professors, you can see that majority also were comprised or were come from male. And then in terms of the engagement in empirical research, more than 80% were actually engaged in empirical research. So if you're wondering what is empirical research, it means that the usual qualitative and also quantitative research that were conducted, not the research that were based on the architectural or those designing or projects, not like involving data collection projects. Okay, so we move on to another descriptive analysis in terms of the mean scores of the study. So of the explanatory factor scale. So can first we'll look at the academic rank in which that involving postdoc and assistant professors. So those circle is actually considered as higher scale scores in which that postdoc and assistant professor rank that they actually have high publication pressure, high funding pressure, and also high mentoring and high competitiveness. But then they have the lowest scale score for peer norms and also organizational justice. And then in terms of the disciplinary field, we can see that the art and humanities field have the highest scale score for work pressure, publication pressure, as well as the competitiveness. But then similar with postdoc and assistant professor, they also have the lowest scale score for peer norms and also organizational justice. And in terms of the prevalence of the QRPs and research misconduct, we can see that the five most prevalent QRPs, which is indicated by the Likert scale of at least 5, 6, or 7. The first one is actually QRP 9, which is not submitting or resubmit valid negative studies for publication. And the second highest is the QRP 10, which is the insufficient inclusion of study flaws and limitations in publications. And the third one is the QRP2, which is the insufficiently supervised or mentored junior co-workers or researchers. The next one is the insufficient attention to the equipment, skills, or expertise involved in research. And the fifth most prevalent QRPs are the inadequate notes of research processes. And less than 1% of respondents reported that they actually have been unfairly reviewed manuscript, grant application, or colleagues. And also, less than 1% of respondents reported that they have been using improper referencing of source. Okay, so now you can see that this is figure 2 in which the percentage of observed answer of categories of QRPs across all respondents. So those with high prevalence of QRPs are these five: QRP 1, 2, 7, 9, and also 10. So you can see that distribution is here. The QRP 1 is includes the insufficient attention to the equipment, skills, or expertise. QRP 2 is the insufficiently supervised or mentored junior or co-workers. And 7 is the inadequate notes of research process. 9 is the not submitting of resubmit valid negative studies for publication, and 10 is the insufficient inclusion of study flaws and limitations in publications. So, Prof. Chu, do you agree with this?
I think QRP 10 is something that I can recognize with. But whether that is intentional or unintentional though, uh, I think is intentional lah. Something like intentionally you omitting flaw that you don't want to declare or to disclose. Yeah. Otherwise, people would think if I said that in the paper, they will reject my paper, that kind of thing lah. So, wow, that's terrible, isn't it? It's almost like slightly less than 20% lah. That's quite a
Yes,
lot.
70%. I think most is 70%.
That's quite a lot also though. Almost like 1 in 25. Oh no, one in 6 or 7, isn't it? Every 1 in 6 or 7 papers, or 1 in 6 researcher.
Researchers.
Hmm. Um, 4 and 6 were the least, 4 and 6 unfairly reviewed, improper
Yes.
referencing. Okay.
Yes, very small proportion here for QRP 4 and QRP 6.
8 also failed to report important study details.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure about the others. I can see also we have a senior colleague here. I'm not so sure about the proportions in UPM or in Malaysia, but I definitely agree these are the QRP, potential QRP lah. Yeah. And that's why it may be very interesting and important to repeat similar study in our respective country, If there are participants from another country here, yeah, I think until we do this, we will not know the proportion of QRP or FF in our own country. But
Yes.
the study will be very, very challenging. As you can see, the response rate, could be below 20% itself. So I'm not sure. Later on, we can see how the paper discuss their representativeness. Yeah.
So we move on in terms of the academic rank. So you can see that PhD candidates and junior researchers had the highest prevalence of 8 out of 11 QRPs across the rank. So the 8 here is actually excluding number 2, which is insufficiently supervised or mentored junior co-workers. This could be because they are still juniors, so they don't really have any mentee yet. Yeah, and then the other 2 that exclude from the highest score is actually number 9, which is not submitting or resubmit valid negative studies for publication. This can also be assumed that maybe they are still juniors, so they are still have that honesty. Yeah. So what do you think about this, Prof?
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
That's perhaps some peculiar to this group of people.
And then in terms of the disciplinary field, respondents from the life and medical sciences have the highest prevalence of any frequent QRP, which is around 53%. And then they also have the highest prevalence of the estimate for any FF as compared with the other 4 disciplinary field. So we are more prone to QRP and FF.
Can you repeat again how they define or create this the prevalence of any frequent QRP again?
In which that they have the score of at least 5 in most of the QRPs. Because 5 is like the highest score, right? So they have the score of 5 of the most QRP.
Of any frequent QRP?
Yes, any frequent QRP.
of the all the how
Yes.
many QRP are there?
Yes.
11, right?
11. So they have the most frequent QRP.
Most
Most
frequent
frequent of any QRP.
of any QRP.
QRP.
So meaning in health sciences, of the 11 items, slightly more than half had respondents scored at least 5 and above lah.
Yes, correct.
So that's one of the way they kind of recode their variables
Mm.
so that it looks or appears serious lah. But indeed it's something serious. Yeah. So this is one of the creative way you can recode your variable lah. Yeah.
Yes. So in terms of the prevalence of the not applicable answer, you can see that for this QRP4 has the highest prevalence of not applicable answer among the PhD candidates and also junior researchers. And next is for the QRP9 is the highest uh, for those in arts and humanities field in which that they rate not applicable in not submitting or resubmit valid negative studies for publication. Okay, so these are the two most commonly rated as not applicable answers. Okay, so we move on to the regression analysis. So you can see here that a PhD candidate or junior researcher is associated with the statistically higher odds of any frequent QRPs compared with other academic rank because the reference category here is postdoc and also assistant professors. And then next, being a non-male, which is female, or whether they don't want to disclose their gender, and doing a non-empirical research is associated with a lower overall QRP mean and also lower odds of any frequent QRP as compared with the reference category. And then the third one, in terms of the FF, the associations of the background characteristic with any FF have wide confidence intervals and none of these actually are statistically significant compared with the other two outcomes.
Just now we were looking at the descriptive statistic and noted that life and medical sciences
Yes,
was likely to have the most frequent QRP, isn't it?
yes,
But when they run the multivariable logistic regression,
yes.
it seems like all disciplines are equal, no?
Different.
Are equally having this frequent QRP.
But it's not significant lah.
I mean, they're not significant,
Yeah.
mean they are equal lah,
Sama.
similar. Mm.
So in terms of the explanatory factor scale with the outcome, so you can see that the standard deviation increase on the publication pressure scale is associated with an increase in the overall QRP mean score, in which means that you can also translate this as the more publication pressure that the researcher feels, it also would increase the overall QRP mean of the researcher. And then each standard deviation increase on the scientific norms, peer norms, and also organizational justice is actually associated with a lower overall QRP mean score, in which that if they adhere to these scales, they could actually have lower overall QRP mean.
These are the positive culture, isn't it?
Yes, yes, positive culture. Because scientific norm, as we have defined earlier in this presentation, is actually related to the ideal behavior of the peers of the scientific behavior that the researchers should adhere to.
Yes.
Okay, and then in terms of the QRP, so each standard deviation increase on the publication pressure, similar with the QRP mean, will also increase the any frequent QRP, which is around 20% of the QRP, any frequent QRP. And similar with the overall QRP, scientific norm substitution, peer norms, and also organizational justice skills will also work the other way around lah, which that can also indicate lower odds to this any frequent QRP.
So they are protective lah. They are
Yes,
averting QRP
yes,
by
yes,
having a scientific norm being adhered to, a good peer norm, and a good organizational justice in terms of promotion, right?
yes.
Remuneration, promotions, and all that assessment. Yeah.
And then in terms of the FF, original regression also shows that for each standard deviation increase on the scientific norms, a subscription or perceived likelihood of detection by reviewer scales, the odd of any FF also decreases by a factor of 79 and 0.62 respectively.
So one
Mm.
can take away from this table is the publishing pressure is so bad,
Yes. Hmm.
Netherlands,
Yeah,
cause them to
this too.
questionable research practice. They'll just have to do something just to get it published. They can be so bad, it can have so bad effect. I'm not so sure
Uh,
about us.
Iman, may I ask for the ordinary regression, right?
Mm.
How do they classify the outcome actually?
Yeah, because I actually look at their data statistical plan, but they actually don't really indicate on how they actually categorize this FF. But what can I understand is actually there would be three like scale. One is FF or falsification, one is fabrication, or the other one is either one. Hmm. Is that possible, doctor? On how they actually
It's the
calculate?
outcome. I think there are more than two categorical outcomes.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
go
but
before
I
the
think
others.
from the questionnaire is only have FF or the only have falsification or another one
Yes
is
and
what?
no, is it? Is
Yes
it?
or no?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Huh. That's
They
why
have.
actually we try to discuss lah, Prof. Actually, how they come with the ordinary regression because ordinary regression have at least you need to have at least around three category.
So I think one is
Mm.
one is falsification, one is fabrication, and the other one is anyone, right?
Anyone or not doing it? I think.
Oh,
They define on the footnote, NF refers to fabrication or
okay,
falsification.
falsification.
So perhaps, but they have to be described clearer lah. Fabrications or
Or falsification.
falsifications, and then no fabrication, no falsification. So the tiga lah. Fabrication, yes and no, yes.
Mm.
Falsification, yes. And then no fabrication and no falsification. Is that so? Or could it be
If
four?
if we look at table two, under the FF is actually three. One is fabrication, which is defined as making up of data for results.
Mm,
Falsification is manipulating research materials, data, or
mm.
results, and then any FF, fabrication and slash or falsification.
How about
Like,
no? None of that.
yeah, nine.
So there are four then.
Yeah, and or fabrication and or falsification.
Can you
Yeah.
show that table again? So I think that will be the outcome like they use in this ordinal regression.
Table
Azifa.
two. Oh
It
yes,
has to
this
be more
one.
than two, isn't it? Otherwise it'll be just logistic.
This one. Bottom three here. Fabrication, falsification, and EFF.
Not seeing any
But yeah.
on the screen. Are you
Eh,
showing the
oh,
screen?
sorry. Uh,
I suppose the reference category will be no falsification and no fabrication.
this one on table two. Any FF, fabrication, and slash or falsification. Yeah, I think the reference category is a no.
I think lah, but
Mm.
usually I'm more interested to know if there is any AF falsification macam tu lah kan actually.
It could be also just two category also, isn't it? Any AF is one, and then no AF
No,
another one
mm,
also, right?
mm.
So it's not clear lah.
I think they put one AF is higher than the other and they must have a reason why they put and they use an ordinary regression, not just a multiple ordinary regression.
It does not matter if just two categories. So you
Because
must
ordinary ada rank kan Prof actually. So mesti ada rank daripada 1 to 3. So mesti
yeah, yeah. So it
yeah.
must
Or is it
define
like
they must define
mm.
their
Hmm.
Is it the
outcome.
first or is it the first rank is both?
Then
First is both and then anyone and then no.
They have to
Yeah, yeah, but they don't
define
really,
it,
yeah.
right? Because it's not clear, isn't it?
Mm,
Yeah,
how they rank it lah.
yeah, it has to be right.
Okay, so I think that's on the result. So can we move on to the discussion, Prof?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So first, in terms of the summary of the main findings, in terms of the explanatory factor skills, the postdoc and assistant professor rate the publication pressure, funding pressure, and also competitiveness higher than other academic ranks. And arts and also humanities scholars reported experiencing the highest work and publication pressure, but the lowest in mentoring, peer norms, and also organizational justice. And in terms of the background and also the QRP, as we can see in the results that we have discussed, PhD candidates and junior researchers, males, and those doing empirical research engage more often in any frequent QRPs. And in terms of the association, the scientific norm subscription was associated with the lowest prevalence of any frequent QRP and also any FF because it is the protective factors, right? And then in terms of the publication pressure, as you can see, it is associated with higher odds of any frequent QRP, and work pressure and competitiveness were only marginally associated with higher QRP. But I think this one is not, is only marginally significant in these associations. So let's look at the explanatory factors that may drive or reduce research misbehavior or misconduct. First is the publication pressure. So you can see that it can cause the largest increase in the odds of any frequent publish. So this could be related with the reward system with the KPI in academia, in which that it could be defined as publish or perish among the academics. And then in terms of the subscription to the scientific norms, one of the two explanatory factor scales with the largest significant association in lowering any frequent QRP or FF. So what this indicates is that actually the institutional leaders or the department leaders can actually pay attention to improve or to actually do something in terms of promoting the responsible conduct of research. Okay, and then the third one is on the perceived likelihood of detection by reviewers. So it is associated with the lower odds of any FF, in which that those works that have been reviewed actually can increase transparency, and this can be also offered by the open science practices such as data sharing, and this can also increase detection of research misconduct, whether through journal reviewers or whether through post publication peer reviews such as the comments on preprints, because some journals actually allows comments on preprints. And then in terms of the supervision and mentoring, statistically significant association can be seen between survival mentoring and also higher overall QRP, in which that mentors can influence behavior in ways that both increase, which that the survival mentoring, or decrease in the case of responsible mentoring in terms of the likelihood of the problematic research behaviors.
So is that mean the bad toxic supervisor or mentor also produce toxic and problematic mentee,
Hmm.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, in
So
other way around. Yeah.
parents
Yeah.
apa bapa rintik anak apa
Bapak boleh anak ni.
bapa buat rintik. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's evidence based now, isn't it?
Because if you look at the questionnaire, the survival mentoring is actually what we define as asalkan boleh survive in the field. So if like Prof Chu have said, if the mentoring, the survival mentoring is not correct, is not conducted in the correct way, so it can also increase the problematic research behavior among the researchers. Okay. And then in terms of the areas of focus within disciplines, academic ranks, and gender, first we can see that within the discipline, the art and humanities have the highest proportion of non-applicables, suggesting what is deemed as QRP may differ within the art and humanities. But we can see that in this study, they actually recode the NA as never also. So so they can actually, we cannot know actually the NA is actually whether they don't do it or whether they it is not applicable to their field. Okay, and then the number two is the young researchers may be more prone to unintentionally committing QRP given that they have lack of research experience in combination with post supervision. And in terms of the gender, male can be associated with higher odds of any frequent QRP and higher overall mean with a QRP, which is also this finding agreeable with the findings from other studies.
So jahat punya selalu lelaki kan. So evidence based also.
Yeah, because maybe this could also be related with the other findings also uh, indicate that male also usually will participate in high risk punya activities lah
Yeah,
compared with female.
yeah, isn't it? Work pressure all that.
And then in terms of the prevalence of QRP and FF, previously if we compared with other study, prevalence of self-reported QRP were in the range of 13 to 30%, but in this study it was around 50%. But then this might be due to the cutoff that were used in the analysis in which that they defined the QRP with at least the score of 5, 6 or 7. That's how they get higher prevalence compared with other study. And then when they compared with other studies that published after 2011 also showed that higher prevalence of misbehavior may also be due to the increased awareness of research integrity in the recent years, in which that when they have higher awareness, so there are more research misconduct being reported. And then in terms of the research misconduct, the prevalence estimate of self-reported fabrication is around 4.3% and self-reported falsification is around 4.2%, while the prevalence estimate of any FF is around 8.3% in this study. And in this study also they indicate that the life and medical sciences field have the highest estimate of any FF, which is around 10%, which also has been previously reported by others. But this, in terms of the field specific research misconduct, they don't really discuss it in the paper.
Mm.
Yeah. If you would like to add on this point, Prof.
You know, the Likert
Mm.
scale of 1 to 7, you know, I wonder if you have the Likert scale of 1 to 10, the respondent, some of the respondent may feel like, I did some slightly QRP. So they may choose like, 5 or 6 lah, isn't it? So that's could be the way QRP be able to capture so-called the slight QRP or mild or low QRP.
Mm.
Instead of you have just like 1 to
1 to
3 or
10.
1 to 5, so you have a, a larger interval of the responses. So they feel like one step, one 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 option or one Likert higher depict a higher jump. So they feel like, oh, I'm not that bad. I'm just slightly bad. So I don't have the right option for me to choose. So I choose, So mayhap if you widen the range of the Likert scale, it seems like it open up um, or fulfill more respondents kind of feeling of QRP, I suppose. Compared to, I'm not sure, but when they compare to the previous
Yeah.
research of just 13 to 33% of QRP, not sure the Likert scale. Usually the Likert scale 1 to 5, isn't it?
Mm. Yes.
The one that they use 1 to 7. If you use 1 to 10, perhaps you may get more than 50%.
Mm.
I don't know. Yeah.
Do you have any opinion on this, Prof? In which that when they compared within disciplines, I mean interdisciplines, that the life and medical sciences have the highest estimate of FF.
Um, yeah. I suppose social sciences, I mean, what they can falsify. I mean, if they are doing social sciences, they're asking people, I'm not sure, maybe the tendency to falsify, to fabricate are less. Health sciences, I mean, we have colleague here from the lab base, the fabrications and falsification perhaps is, the tendency is higher lah. And just how we read the result of negative reporting. Mean to social science, negative reportings are result. I tanya orang itu whether they like Apple product or not. They say they don't like. They don't like is a result. To them, it's not a negative result. But to us in health sciences, negative meaning, or we thought that hypothesis say they love Apple product, but we find they don't love Apple product, or we don't feel like it's a positive finding. So in life sciences, perhaps there's this kind of a phenomenon is there lah, and not in social sciences. That's why I'm not so sure whether the researcher team of this research, they are also teams of multidisciplinary. I think you require the same discipline backgrounds researcher to understand and to interpret the findings. If you leave it to me, I will not be able to interpret well those from these social science backgrounds, engineering background, isn't it? I cannot fully grasp what kind of challenges they have in their research.
Okay, so for the strength and limitation of the study, so for the strength, as we have indicated in the earlier slides, this is actually the largest research integrity survey in academia to date that has looked at not only the prevalence of QRP but also the FF and also the largest range of possible explanatory factors in one single study, and also they conducted across all disciplinary fields and academic ranks during the RR technique to ensure more honesty of the response.
Mm.
But then in terms of the limitations of the study, first, as we can see that the response rate is quite low, which is around 20% only. And they're also unable to credibly verify the scrap email address for the non-NSRI supporting institution. So they don't really have the actual response rate if compared with all the institutions that have the academics in the Netherlands. And then in terms of the analysis plan, they recode their NA answer into never, because the one could indicate never, so they don't really differentiate between whether the participants not commit to that behavior or because it is truly not applicable and intentionally refraining from doing so. So that's how they cannot differentiate between the never and also the not applicable. And then in terms of the misclassification in academic rank due to promotion of individuals to a higher rank in less than 3 years prior to completing the survey. So the responses are therefore likely to partly represent the behaviors whilst they are currently in lower academic rank, but there is no data on years of experience of respondents because they only recall the most recent 3 years.
I can understand why they recode the not applicable to never, just to save on the sample size. If they exclude that one, they may not get
No, I can't.
numbers in the analysis. Yeah, and that is actually a kinder way of analyzing it. Though you were saying it could be also they committed it, but they don't declare it. But they can you imagine if those responded as not applicable, but indeed they did some QRP or FF, and the percentages, the proportion would be actually higher, isn't it? Yeah. So it's a kind of a kinder kind of a analysis recoding.
Okay, so in terms of the future recommendation for this research, I think other than to include larger sample size, the researcher also indicates that they should conduct a qualitative study, which in terms of the in-depth interactive workshop to further understand the major drivers or suppressors of QRPs and FF in order to elucidate the nuances that the survey cannot capture, because this one is only for more on like quantitative study. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I think, what do you think, Prof? If we were to conduct this study in Malaysia, how do we ensure that we have higher response rate other than that?
I'm not sure about the others. I feel it's going to be very, very, very slim success, very, very slim success. I don't know how to encourage responses. Uh, of course, if you can apply all that strategy like RR, no, and hire a third party to do it, but still, um, except I'm not sure about the others here. If you all can give some comment, except if the researcher when they send out the questionnaire, they say something like we are working on mitigation measures. Like say they'll say we hear you, we can feel you. You are under pressure to publish, under pressure to get funding for project. We can feel you are burnout. You are stressed out in academic. We are working on something to help you. But before that, can you give us some feedback on what is QR, how is QRP and FF is in your research career? I don't know. Maybe that will give people some hope. I'm not sure whether also that can invite some bias, isn't it? Oh, since you are going to do something, I tell you more worse one. Oh, teruk sangat teruk lah. So please do something fast. I'm not sure. That also can introduce some bias, isn't it? I mean, this would need a good discussion and planning lah. But whether yes and no, I think definitely yes have to be do. We have to do this kind of study. Otherwise, we do not know what is the scale of the proportion, or we don't have an approach. People don't have the opportunity to give to tell the truth what is happening. We all can just assume, based on my circles of network, or feel like, oh, this is the problem, this problem. Unless we conduct a similar study, we really do not know, uh, how bad or how good are we lah, in terms of research integrity.
Okay, so we move on to the critical appraisal of the paper. So this is based on the JPI critical appraisal tool for analytical cross-sectional study. So in terms of the inclusion criteria is clearly defined, yes. Were the subjects and the setting described in detail? I think yes. Was the exposure measured in a valid and reliable way? Yes. Were the objective standard criteria used for the measurement of the condition? I think it's yes. But then in terms of the confounding factors, they don't really include any confounding factors in the analysis. Right, Prof?
Yeah. That's why I think they suggested to conduct a kind of in-depth interview on what are the protective features of positive culture. I think also publication pressure. I don't know whether there's anything to explore lah. Uh, yeah.
In terms of the
But
outcomes, yeah. I think in terms of the statistical analysis, also outcomes, they also actually have planned their analysis. While they even have the statistical analysis manual that you can actually access from the open science platform.
But when I
Yeah.
comment a bit on the statistical part, actually
Yes.
because
Yes.
I
Yeah.
go
Sure.
through the yeah
Boleh.
because I go through the statistical plan. Actually, they have a very good plan. They even plan to have a two association to conduct um statistical analysis at two different place, two different time, to ensure that the result is good lah. I mean reliable. However, I think even though the plan is good, a lot of statistical analysis is not very clearly defined. So, for example, how they especially in the protocol, not in the protocol, in the research paper published lah, especially how they conduct the variable selection, the covariate, as well as they use the PCA or not. It's not very clearly defined in the study analysis part. So actually, it's an eye opening for me actually because they start from PFA, and then I don't know what's going on in the middle, and then go to the logistic regressions. Maybe Prof have something to add on.
it's a matter of whether we believe their plan. If they said they are going to do in such a manner, and whether we can believe whether they did what they plan to do. But one good thing is that they share their data set, and we can know if really we want to verify, we can download the data set and we can repeat the analysis, see whether we can get the proportions. So that
Yeah.
part is actually they kind of open it, we go and check.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. That's why open science and sharing of data set is something that is really you want to let people to verify. You come and check for yourself, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Iman, they have the protocol yang memang very clear for the analysis part. Ada tak?
Full protocol? Full
Yang
protocol tak ada, but
yang after apa tu after result dapat.
oh tak ada, no. They
Ada
only
kan?
have their raw data.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you can try to analyze.
I need a good suspicion beside me.
You can just pick like one or two, and if you get the result they reported, then likely they did it as planned.
Okay,
If you
sure.
get the two or three, then you may start writing to the journal of the editor of the journal, telling them that they are not doing what they plan to do.
Okay,
Yeah.
Prof.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Azifah. So I think we have reached at the end of our presentation. So do you have any questions or any comments on this study, or any additional or takeaway home message from Prof. Chiu?
I would love to hear the participants here, what do you think about this study? Would you like to know the same? In our own country, there's we have like the very good audience turn up here. I think for many of us who are doing research on academic, this is something like we all know. Uh, I'm afraid, we may commit QRP or FF sometimes unconsciously, uh, or we have been blunted or numb already, as everyone's are doing it, that kind of thing, quietly or hideously. But this I'm not so sure about this research integrity movement. Uh, we heard Dr. Chow Deming a few days ago. It seems like as the paper discussed, it is now increasingly being uh, kind of taken up by many organizations and society. As we know that the stake is high if we are found out or publics lose trust in us, then as what we can actually witness, isn't it, during the COVID, when there's misinformation, when there's wrong informations about science. So it's not that the public lose out, it's actually they get harms. Yeah. So there's no neutral, there's no atas paga. Either they get the benefits, if they don't get it, they'll get harms. So I think I really have no idea how we can turn the science around, so called. Like 50 years ago, science enjoy the high trust of society. Scientists are, respectable individual in the society. It may not be said the same now. Yeah. Perhaps in our country it's not so bad. I think it's very bad in US, isn't it? So, and this kind of research integrity, I'm not sure with this paper goes to the general public, how would they perceive it? Whether they would have more negative perception of academics and scientists, or whether they will applaud us, wow, you well done, you are self-correcting, that kind of thing. I'm not so sure. That's why uh, I, perhaps this is kind of a reflection of how the society has become, isn't it? It's actually the people inside the enterprise lah. Like in science, you have this kind of people, you have these kinds of practices. So if really you want to go back to the root cause, I would think is individual moral value, individual uh, ethical value, understanding. If you have this high value, I think you wouldn't dare to fabricate or falsify. You would think, ooh, how could I do this, isn't it? So, but if that falsification, fabrication happens, it just show that uh, the conscience is dead lah. Conscience is dead, and there's no more black and white uh, differentiation within the individuals, isn't it? Am I overstate? Am I saying something too strongly?
Yeah, I think that's why, Prof.
But I've even said that we know that everyone's are human being. We have our weakness, isn't it? And we always appreciate or need organization support, societal support, community support. Yeah. If you were, among the mafia, I think you act like mafia because all your friends are mafia, isn't it? But if you were among the saints, so although you are bad, then perhaps you also act like a saint. I suppose that's what you call that, hurts influences also lah. Yeah. So right, I think that's all from me. And it's a very, very interesting presentation by Iman. Thank you so much.
So thank you everyone for attending our MJ session today.